Tonight, crisis point.
The border is closed.
Thousands of children detained after crossing the southern border alone, and many more are on the way. And
I'm very concerned.
Democrats in the Senate have their finger on the big red button.
They're prepared to steamroll the Senate.
The nuclear option, dumping the filibuster. Plus,
sir, put the gun down. I don't want to hurt you.
high-tech training helps officers know when and when not to shoot. And
the 15 seed, the upset makers are history makers.
Cinderella story for one of the largest and most influential universities in the world. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Turning up the political heat south of the border. Welcome to Faith Nation. Good evening. I'm John Jessup. Well, with increasing criticism from Republicans and an intensifying glare from the media spotlight, the Biden White House announced today officials will be heading to Mexico to stem the tide of migrants crossing the border, including thousands of unaccompanied children. CBN White House correspondent Eric Phillips is here now. Eric, the situation grows more complicated by the day.
Yeah, and John, listen to this. The Biden White House is still resisting calling the situation at the southern border a crisis, though it admits that it's not a good situation. The Biden administration is saying it's using a variety of means to communicate to migrants one simple message.
The message is quite clear. Do not come. The border is closed. The border is secure.
It's a tough sell when this is what agents are dealing with at the border. These exclusive images taken by Texas Congressman Henry Cuellar and submitted to Axios. Authorities say they usually encounter 30 migrants a day trying to cross the border.
And now we're getting 30 within 30 minutes.
Wow.
One migrant offered an explanation to ABC's Martha Raddatz.
Would you have tried to do this when Donald Trump was president?
Definitely not.
So did you come here because Joe Biden was elected president?
Basically.
Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas underscored on This Week that Border Patrol agents are expelling families and single adults who cross the southern border. But right now, there are some 15,000 children in federal custody, minors who crossed the border alone.
We are encouraging children not to come. Now is not the time to come. Do not come. The journey is dangerous.
President Biden vowing he'll take a trip to the border.
Are you thinking of going to the border?
At some point I will, yes.
In the meantime, two of his top officials are heading to Mexico.
We need to work in partnership with these countries to address the root causes in their countries, to convey clearly and systematically that this is not the time to travel.
A message, the administration says, that's also being conveyed over TV, radio, and social media in Central American countries. Former President Trump offering these words of advice to the new administration.
The wall is just about finished, just little sections of the wall. Contractors are essentially paid, and they should finish the wall. It's a very little. You could finish it in a month, and it's impossible that they're not. It's just crazy that they're not finishing the wall.
Former President Trump having no shortage of criticism for the Biden administration. He released a written statement over the weekend saying, in part, "We proudly handed the Biden administration the most secure border in history. All they had to do was keep this smooth-running system on autopilot. Instead, in the span of just a few weeks, the Biden administration has turned a national triumph into a national disaster." John.
Not surprising they have a difference of perspectives. Thanks, Eric. The CDC is warning of a fork in the road in the fight against COVID-19 here in the United States. At today's briefing by the White House COVID response team, CDC Director Rochelle Walensky said although America is seeing some hopeful signs, the nation is also at a critical point.
The continued relaxation of prevention measures while cases are still high, and while concerning variants are spreading rapidly throughout the United States, is a serious threat to the progress we have made as a nation.
Dr. Walensky notes while deaths continue to decline, states increasingly are seeing a growing number of cases with COVID variants. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the direction of the pandemic varies across the country, with some states and regions like the Northeast and Upper Midwest starting to see a rise in cases. Well, turning now to the federal probe into the January 6th Capitol insurrection, the prosecutor in charge of the Justice Department investigation said rioters involved in the breach are likely to be charged with sedition. Lead prosecutor Michael Sherwin told CBS News 60 Minutes he monitored the rally turned mob, watching it devolve into chaos.
Do you anticipate sedition charges against some of these suspects?
I believe the facts do support those charges, and I think that as we go forward, more facts will support that, Scott. This is going to be a long-term investigation.
The DOJ has not ruled out criminal charges against President Trump for incitement. Some suspects told investigators they stormed the Capitol following the former president's instructions. Others said they did it because President Trump would not. Well, the Capitol today was a scene of heated debate over whether Washington, D.C. should become the 51st state, a political battle brewing for decades that's gained momentum in recent years. Democrats say it's about fairness and representation, while Republicans call it a power grab. CBN's Jenna Browder explains how D.C. statehood could tilt the nation's balance of power.
Taxation without representation. That's what D.C. license plates famously read. And now with some renewed enthusiasm, Democrats are hoping to change that by making D.C. its own state.
End taxation without representation and pass H.R. 51.
Today, members of the House Oversight and Reform Committee held a hearing to examine the issue. Should Washington, D.C. be its own state?
After years of stagnation and indifference to the rights of thousands of D.C. residents, there is real and sustained momentum behind this effort.
Once seen as a far-left idea, D.C. statehood is now supported by almost all Democrats. And with control of the House, Senate, and White House, this could be their time. The same bill fell flat in 2020. Meanwhile, Republicans see the effort as a blatant power grab.
Let's be very clear. Today's hearing is all about creating 2 new Democratic U.S. Senate seats.
Since D.C. consistently supports the Democratic nominee for president, statehood would tilt the balance of power in the Senate to Democrats. And that's why Republicans want to keep it neutral, independent of any state.
It's our duty as representatives for all Americans that we safeguard their capital.
And even if this bill passes the House, it faces an uphill battle in the Senate because of the filibuster rule, which requires 60 votes for passage. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thank you, Jenna. And here with us now is Zach Smith, who was at that Capitol hearing. He is a legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Zach, thanks so much for being here. D.C. statehood has long been a local dream in Washington, a movement that's gained momentum within the Democratic Party. Zach, how do you think D.C. is, how close, rather, do you think D.C. is to becoming a state?
Well, I certainly think D.C. statehood, this H.R. 51 bill, is going to pass the House of Representatives. The identical bill passed the House of Representatives last year as well. But again, it ran into issues in the Senate last time, and I anticipate that it will likely run into issues in the Senate again this time as well.
Zach, at today's hearing, you talked about the framers and what they envisioned of a federal capital. Is there a constitutional reason that the nation's capital is not a state?
Yes, absolutely. There's several constitutional reasons why Congress cannot, by simple legislation, transform the District of Columbia into our nation's 51st state. There's the issue of the 23rd Amendment, which gave the district electoral college votes for president and vice president. That should certainly be repealed before D.C. becomes a state. And then there's also the issue, we hear a lot, 37 times previously in our history, states have been admitted by simple legislation. Well, that's true, but no other state owes its very existence to a separate provision of the Constitution, which the district does. It was created under the authority given to Congress in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, the District Clause.
Zach, I know that you got some pushback for an argument you made against statehood, saying because members of Congress can see people's yard signs as they file onto the Capitol, D.C. residents already impact the national debate. Zach, what did you mean by that?
Well, look, I think one of the reasons the Founding Fathers wanted a separate federal district is they didn't want any one state to have undue influence over the national debate or the federal government. And the point with the yard signs was, where else in the country can such a simple act have such a major impact? Whereas if residents around the country put yard signs or bumper stickers on the car, they'll likely only be seen by a few politicians, whereas DC residents undertaking those same acts can literally influence or impact hundreds of members of Congress. And so, DC residents certainly already play a significant role in the national debate. I think we saw that today with the fact that we're having this hearing yet again, despite DC statehood remaining unpopular in the rest of the country. And if DC were to become a state, I certainly think it would have that undue influence that James Madison was so afraid of.
All right, Zach Smith with the Heritage Foundation. Zach, thanks for making time for us today.
Of course. Thank you.
Well, still ahead on Faith Nation, the nuclear option looms over the Senate. Will Democrats finish off the filibuster once and for all?
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. Former President Trump is warning today that if Democrats abolish a long-standing Senate procedure, it would be, quote, catastrophic for Republicans. Changing the filibuster would allow Democrats to pass their progressive agenda, but could it backfire? CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson explains.
Republicans are predicting dire consequences if Democrats remove the filibuster and permanently change Senate rules, allowing legislation to pass with a simple majority.
When they talk about transforming the country, they'll be able to.
Republican Senator Rand Paul tells CBN News he didn't support former President Trump's calls to remove the filibuster when the GOP held the Senate majority, and he certainly doesn't support it now.
I'm very concerned because basically the future of our country depends on two Democrats right now not overturning the filibuster.
Those two Democrats, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin.
I am not willing to take away the involvement of the minority.
Senator Manchin confirmed he's not ready to end bipartisanship.
Can you imagine not having to sit down, or there's no reason for you to sit down with your colleagues on both sides and have their input? The Senate is the most unique body of government in the world, of governing body in the world. It's deliberate.
The number 2 Senate Democrat, Dick Durbin, argues Republicans abuse the filibuster, and it's time to end its power.
When Senator McConnell and others come to the floor and plead for us to hang on to the traditions of the Senate, I would tell you that their interpretation of the traditions is strangling this body.
But during Donald Trump's presidency, he argued this.
What about that nuclear option, doing away with the filibuster?
Well, I can tell you that would be the end of the Senate as it was originally devised and created going back to our founding fathers.
President Biden suggested this week the Senate should go back to the talking filibuster.
I don't think you have to eliminate the filibuster. You have to do it what it used to be when I first got to the Senate, and that is that a filibuster, you had to stand up and command the floor. Once you stopped talking, you lost that, and someone could move in and say, I moved the question of. So you got to work for the filibuster.
Minority Leader Mitch McConnell warns killing the filibuster would break the Senate.
Even though the American people sent a 50-50 Senate and a narrowly divided House, I don't think they were sending a message that there was a mandate to completely transform the country in every way liberals want to do that.
Vowing if it goes away, Republicans will use every rule and option at their disposal to stall legislation.
They're prepared to steamroll the Senate into a majoritarian body, just like the House, because it inconveniently gets in the way of all they want to do, to run up the debt, to raise taxes, and you've seen the disaster at the border.
Under current rules, Senate Democrats don't have the votes to pass the House-approved Equality Act or the For the People voting reform bill. If the filibuster goes away, those bills and more, such as D.C. statehood, could become law. Reporting from Virginia, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
When we come back, to shoot or not to shoot, a high-tech simulator training cops in crucial decision-making when they answer dangerous calls.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
This Easter, spend time reflecting on Jesus' final week. In CBN's free devotional, The Hope for Redemption, you'll follow his path to Jerusalem, observe his last Passover meal, gain insight to his agony at Gethsemane, witness his crucifixion, and encounter the empty tomb. This Easter, realize afresh that he is risen. Get your free copy today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/Easter Devotional.
Welcome back. With another person added today, jury selection in the murder trial against the police officer accused of killing George Floyd is down to just one alternate. To date, 14 jurors have been seated, with the selection period now in its third week. Opening statements in the case against Derek Chauvin, who kneeled on the neck of George Floyd for nearly 9 minutes before his death, begin next week. Well, feeling the heat after a number of high-profile shootings in 2020, police departments are re-examining how to respond to the split-second decision of whether or not to shoot. So how is technology preparing officers to protect themselves and the public? CBN News got a first-hand look at a high-tech simulator that's as real as it gets. Once again, here's Eric Phillips.
Law enforcement officers face a critical balancing act each shift they work. They strive to follow the law, protect and serve citizens, and then return home safely to their own families at the end of the day. It's an unenviable position of having to make split-second decisions that are sometimes deadly and often second-guessed. We traveled to one facility outside of Atlanta to see firsthand the training that can better prepare officers for those high-pressure situations.
Sir, put the gun down. I don't want to hurt you.
Welcome to the Georgia Public Training Center.
Okay, I'll drop it. Okay, just don't shoot me. Thank you, sir. Go ahead and turn around for me.
Training officers on when and when not to shoot is as real as it gets, thanks to this 300-degree simulator made by Inveris. Chris Wigginton is the center's director.
The simulation can actually have people walk up behind you, beside you, have multiple people inside the scenario. And by using this type of system, it puts a officer that's in training or an advanced officer in the types of situations that we can't recreate in real life without somebody getting hurt or injured.
This facility has been training officers across Georgia in crucial decision-making since the 1980s.
We required every officer in the state to receive additional use of force training and de-escalation training before any other, on a national level or any other state was doing this. So we talk about it in a lecture-based environment. We test them academically on a written test.
And put them through high-tech simulation. Instructors showed us how it works.
Drop the gun. I'm not going to.
During the simulation, an instructor controls each moment of the scenario and can change what happens next with the click of a button. Here is where costly mistakes are revealed before they happen in real life, as I learned firsthand.
While standing in line at your bank, you notice a man acting very strange and nervous.
Hi, Derek. You just shot a guy who had an accidental discharge.
And it all boils down sometimes to an officer making a bad decision. And if an officer makes a bad decision, sometimes someone's life will be lost.
I asked Wigginton about statistics that indicate blacks are more likely to be killed by law enforcement than any others.
I just do not believe that law enforcement sets out to murder people of color. When you talk to officers that are involved in use of force cases, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. Every one of them will tell you the same thing, that when that situation started to escalate, color or creed had nothing to do with the decisions they made. It was all about survival and staying alive.
Not moving. We talked specifically about 3 high-profile cases in 2020. First, the case that electrified the nation, the killing of George Floyd.
I'm claustrophobic. I can't breathe. What happened there was not justified, and I think it was very shocking to not only the law enforcement community, but to the nation.
Then there was Brianna Taylor, an innocent woman shot to death when Louisville police stormed her apartment searching for illegal contraband. Her boyfriend shot at them, thinking they were robbers. Officers returned fire. One of their bullets killed Taylor.
When those officers went through the threshold of that door, if they start receiving fire, they're justified in returning fire. And I asked somebody the other day, how many rounds should an officer take before they feel the need to shoot back?
I think you've had too much to drink to be driving.
Then the case of Rayshard Brooks, shot to death by Atlanta PD after a tussle where Brooks grabbed one of the officer's taser and ran.
In that incident, the use of force, up to deadly force, was justified in the way the officers applied that.
Wigginton says the center requires racial sensitivity and diversity training, but some things are out of officers' control.
People want to look at it and say, well, an officer had de-escalation training. Why did this incident end up in a deadly force encounter? Well, sometimes that's not the officer's decision. We always leave out the other part of that conversation, and that's the citizen that's involved in that encounter. The officer can't control what that citizen does.
He says training here is designed to prevent as many deaths as possible.
I don't want to hurt you, sir.
Which he believes is the goal of the vast majority of officers on the streets.
And I think about this just a minute. Do you think there's a police officer that wakes up and puts on their uniform and says, today I'm going to go out and murder someone? I just don't see a police officer that wakes up that wants to get involved in a use of force situation.
Law enforcement officials say it's important to remember the emotional toll officers suffer when they shoot and kill someone. That's something they have to live with for the rest of their lives. And that's when a different kind of training or therapy comes in. Even then, some can't recover and are forced to give up their careers. Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Coming up, making history in the big dance, the Cinderella story of a major Christian university after this.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Welcome to Studio 5 Uncut. This is our opportunity to share extended conversations with some of the great guests we've had on Studio 5.
You can't go anywhere on the planet and not see the impact of gospel music on popular culture.
Now you're a comedian and a Christian. You know, why is that such a baffle?
Being an artist who is a Christian and an artist who's in hip-hop culture, I'm trying to find my own sound.
Studio 5 Uncut. Next.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream. The chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities. The chance to stand on the promises of God. To recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
And finally tonight, a wild win at the free throw line is taking a Christian college from 15 seed to the Sweet 16. Tulsa-based Oral Roberts University made NCAA history Sunday when they defeated Florida 81-78. The win makes Oral Roberts the second number 15 seed in the men's NCAA history to make it to the Sweet 16. Oral Roberts takes on number 3 seed, the Arkansas Razorbacks, next weekend in their first NCAA appearance in over a decade. Way to go, Golden Eagles. Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We'll hope to see you again right here tomorrow.